I was trying to put the spiritual journey idea into context of what I've heard over the last couple of days. And what I've been hearing is about the importance of contemplation and of meditation, of finding time for oneself to think and pray and reflect. My journey as a child began watching my daddy on his knees doing his rosary every night and saying his prayers every night. Mommy also was on her knees, but I don't know, somehow the image of daddy on his knees was really quite powerful, and obviously still is at 68, I'm telling you about it. After my grandmother died, I was sent up the road a bit, an hour or so, to Frederick to live with my grandmother, who had just lost her dear husband, who was a country doctor, but a country farmer. And they had a 100-acre farm, which actually not only fed their family as my mother and her 5 siblings were growing up, but then continued on to feed the 6 children and their families. So as a child, I lived there, as I said, I lived there for 3 years with my grandmother, but I also experienced the butchering, which was the community coming together where everybody was sharing in every kind of possible way. And then I experienced daily the sharing of the food that my grandparents did with our family and my cousins and aunts and uncles. So we lived in a little village called Laytonsville, which now I went through after my husband died. I did kind of somebody told me I did psychotherapy on myself. I don't know what, I went on a journey to kind of go back to my childhood and sort of revisit who I was. And before Alzie and I married, and I went into this little town that I had so loved, and I hadn't been there for years. And it was like a ghost town. And when I lived there as a little girl, it still had its sidewalks, but it had vibrant sidewalks. It had 2 country stores. It had maybe 3 churches. It had a funeral home. It had a mechanic at a fire station. And I had my horse, which I think does relate to what we're all talking about here, which is, again, contemplation and finding time for oneself. My horse's name was Gray Ghost, and Gray Ghost and I were best of friends. And in fact, I was blessed enough, and I obviously came from a blessed background, where when I went to live with my grandmother, my horse came with me. That's probably why it worked. But at any rate, I would go off on rides, and I'd ride for hours. And I reflect back now, and I watch my children raising their glorious children, my 9 grandchildren, and I see great cultural differences, because my parents didn't think twice about me getting on Gray Ghost and riding all day from Montgomery County to Howard County, back to Montgomery County, through dirt roads across for miles and miles. I'm now convinced that that was what has given me the time of reflection, which it was my meditation, and it was my connection with nature. And so it's why I think I'm so passionate, as our speakers are and as you all are, with figuring out how to care for nature now, since we just are doing such destructive things. Quickly fast forward, when Archbishop Kelly asked me to revitalize the Cathedral of the Assumption, we studied the history of the cathedral. So I implore all of you to study your family's history if you haven't already, study your community's history, because in doing that work, what we found is that there was real interest in each other in this community as it was forming. As it was forming, when it was beginning to be the real gateway to the West, people were working together in kinds of ways that now, frankly, we're not, that we need to. And so what we learned in all of that made me reflect that also there, and I beg to, I'm so happy the Vatican is here, because I have to say you've inspired me, the big Vatican, and obviously all of you in it, but have inspired me a lot in the thinking that there are a lot of really incredible, highbrow theologians and thinkers who understand that really our faiths have a lot in common. There are probably more commonalities than there are differences, and even they understand that from this little bit of reading that I did many years ago, that even they celebrate the differences. But then I thought, I had a 2-year junior college education. I don't look back and regret 1 ounce of it, but it wasn't a 4-year or 8-year or a PhD. It wasn't any of that. I didn't have that exposure. So that's what made me think, wouldn't it be nice to have a gathering, have opportunities where we could come together, various faiths, and we could learn about each other through our faiths. Because when I never even met a Jewish person until I went to college. I all of a sudden had a Jewish roommate, and she was divine. We were best of friends immediately, but I had never met a Jewish person. I certainly never met a Muslim, and the list goes on. So from my sheltered world, and I fell in love with Owsley at 19, moved here at 21. I was still in this very sheltered world, right? Many would say you still are, Christy, and I'm sure that's true. But I'm trying to break down those silos. But anyway, what I thought was, gosh, if all those great thinkers know that we belong together, then let's do it ourselves. And so here we are in our 20th year. It's totally extraordinary to me. And it's because, frankly, of all of you that are here, of all of you previously who cared, thought that there was a thread of some hope, of some value in this event. And so I thank you for that. I want to thank my son, who and I know I'm supposed to wrap up because I was told 5 minutes, I bet it's already longer than that. But the thing that's important about thanking Owsley from my perspective as his loving mother is that I think that the future is in the hands, as we know, of Owsley and the younger generation. But it is going to be the families that are able to inspire their young to carry forth these cultural heritages and to carry forth and improve on, which is what Owsley has done. Mustafa, I don't know where you are, but your mummy, Gray, has been my partner in crime with developing this festival of faith. And there's another mother-son that is responsible for this festival. There are many of you, but there's another one that you've seen up here, which is Sarah Harris. Her daddy is Bishop Reed. And and if it hadn't been for Bishop Reed early on, our Episcopal bishop, we wouldn't have our festival like it's true for many our rabbis and our imams. So I want to thank you for that. I think right now we are at a tipping point, as Father Michael said so beautifully, and Cardinal John talked about. And what I read, I'm not going to try to quote him, but what I heard him say is that he's proud of his ancestors. And I'm proud of his ancestors too, and every day I get more proud of his ancestors, and I resent the fact that they were called pagans. Because they knew that the water, the air, and the soil are sacred. And they are just now, yes, clap. And they are now just teaching me and with you and teaching you. And let's learn more about their paganism. Let's learn more about why they knew the air, water, and soil are sacred. Because we don't know it. And because we don't know it, you know what we're doing? We're killing ourselves. Everybody so far has been pretty mild. I say we have a world health crisis on our hands of the serious degree unlike we've ever seen before. Now, I'd love those of you who have statisticians at your fingertips to go and use them and just prove that what I'm saying is wrong. Prove that I am an extremist and that I have lost my balance. I'd love to hear that. Really, seriously, because I'd love to go play some golf. I've never played golf. But there are a lot of people that like it. And I might be good. I used to play tennis. I don't know. But I'd love you, as my concluding thoughts, first of all, again, to thank you, and again, to thank these distinguished gentlemen that have come from so far to really bring their extraordinary global wisdom to us and to become, hopefully, our long-term partners. Because at Louisville, I believe, and they've heard me say it, is an extraordinary point right now as a laboratory. And we will really be a successful laboratory when we actually figure out how to take our Harmony circle of health and how to really personalize it, realizing that each one of those spheres belongs to each of you. Each one of those spheres belongs to the community, and it's only when they're in balance will we be healthy. Thank you.